Hello everyone, it's me again. I'm so happy to see you in my video, and I wish you an enjoyable time watching. The final months of pregnancy made Han's body heavier each day. Every step seemed slower, and sometimes even a short distance forced her to stop and catch her breath. At night, she often struggled to sleep because of her round, tight belly. It wasn't easy to turn and move like before. Yet, in those weary moments, she would rest her hand on her stomach and smile softly whenever she felt the baby's gentle kicks. That was a priceless happiness no hardship could ever dim. Tan seemed to understand all of her struggles. He never let Han carry the weight alone. From small things like fetching a glass of water, helping her stand up or sit down, to bigger things like making sure every meal was full of nutrition, he did everything with care and devotion. Every morning, he woke up early to prepare breakfast, gently reminding his wife, "You only need to rest. Leave everything to me. I just want you and our baby to always be healthy." It wasn't only Tan. My mother was also filled with joy and excitement, eager to welcome the new family member. Every afternoon, she would sit beside Han, her thin but warm hands gently rubbing her daughter-in-law's belly, as if pouring all her love into the unborn grandchild. She whispered old stories, recalling her own childbirths, making Han smile and easing her worries bit by bit. In her eyes shone a sparkling happiness, and her smile never faded, as though every burden of old age had melted away in this sacred anticipation. The small house, once peaceful, now seemed brighter than ever. Warmth and love spread through every corner. Conversations always circled around the baby, what name to choose, whether the child would look like the father or the mother, where they would take the baby for walks on sunny days. The whole family seemed to count down each day, each hour, longing to hear the first cries of the little one. It wasn't just the anticipation of a child's birth. It was the bond of love across generations. In every heart, happiness overflowed, sacred and complete, wrapping the home in a tender, unforgettable light. Beyond caring tenderly for Han, Tan also devoted much time to preparing for the baby's arrival. He painted the small room next to their bedroom with soft, soothing colors. The windows were polished until they gleamed, new curtains were hung, so that each morning's sunlight would fill the room with gentle warmth. He carefully set up the little wooden crib they had chosen, placing it right beside Han's bed for easier care at night. He even learned how to assemble each mattress and guardrail to make sure everything was safe. Watching him bent over his work, sweat beading on his forehead but smiling with contentment, Han felt her heart eased and her worries melt away. My mother was just as busy. She sewed tiny clothes with her own hands, neatly folded them in the new wardrobe. She prepared soft towels, diapers, even small blankets, saying, "These are to keep the baby warm when the cold winds come." In the kitchen, she cooked nourishing meals for Han, humming softly, her face glowing with delight. The house was always alive with warmth and laughter. The sound of Tan reminding Han to rest, my mother's cheerful chatter while preparing baby clothes, conversations about the coming child. All together, they made the little home a complete haven, breathing the same rhythm of excitement, expectation, and happiness. One afternoon, after finishing all his work, Tan took Han's hand and led her to the newly renovated room. He gently opened the door, revealing a space filled with warmth. The little room had taken on a completely new look. Walls painted a soothing shade of blue, a wooden crib neatly placed, and above it hung a delicate mobile with tiny stuffed animals swaying gently in the breeze. Han stood still, her eyes misting over. Every detail in the room radiated care, devotion, and boundless love from Tan and his mother for her, and the baby soon to be born. She ran her hand lightly along the crib's railing, her heart overflowing with indescribable emotion. Tan looked at his wife, smiled softly, and wrapped an arm around her fragile shoulders. "I want our child to grow up in a room filled with love. What do you think?" Han nodded, choking back tears of happiness. In that moment, she felt deeply that she was not alone. Beside her was a husband who always cherished her, a mother-in-law overflowing with affection, and most importantly, a tiny angel growing day by day inside her. The room fell silent, as if only 3 heartbeats remained, beating in unison. Han whispered, like a promise to herself and her family, "Our baby will grow up surrounded by this love." Time went on, each day in their little home marked by the baby's gentle kicks inside Han's belly. The family lived in a circle of happiness, filled with both anticipation and anxious excitement, as if counting down to the most sacred moment. Every evening when everyone gathered together, my mother would rub Han's belly softly, whispering to her unborn grandchild, while Tan simply sat nearby, a radiant smile on his lips. Then one night, as the sky suddenly poured down a light rain, Han froze, her hand gripping Tana's arm. A sharp pain shot through her stomach, making her wince. At first, she thought it was just the usual contractions of late pregnancy, but the waves grew sharper, stronger, leaving her trembling and breathless. Tana's face went pale, but he quickly steadied himself, forcing calm into his voice. He helped his wife sit, dabbed the sweat from her forehead, and called out for my mother. She hurried from the kitchen, and with one look at her daughter-in-law's face, she knew. With the instinct of a woman who had been through it before, she recognized the signs at once. Her voice trembled, but her words were firm. "It's time. We need to take her to the hospital." The quiet house suddenly turned urgent. Tan dashed into the room to grab the pre-packed hospital bag. Clothes for mother and baby, papers, all the essentials. Checking everything again, terrified of forgetting even the smallest item. Outside, rain pattered on the tin roof, cold winds rushing through the cracks, but inside their hearts burned with one fire. Fear and anticipation mingling into one. Han leaned her head against Tana's shoulder, sweat rolling down her pale face, her eyes filled with both fear and longing. Amid the tightening pain, she whispered, voice trembling, "I'm so scared, but I trust you're here with me." Tan squeezed her hand, his eyes blazing, his words steady and strong like a vow. "I'm here. I'll never leave your side. We will get through this together." My mother stood by, her eyes glistening, hands clutching the edge of her shirt. Under the warm yellow glow of the light, the sight of the family rushing for this sacred moment etched itself into memory, marking the beginning of a new journey where love would be tested and happiness rewritten by the baby's first cry. The small ambulance sped through the rain, its siren tearing through the night silence. Tan sat close beside Han, one hand gripping hers, the other wiping away the sweat beading on her pale face. Each time a contraction struck, Han clenched her teeth, breath ragged, eyes shut tight against the pain. Tan could only whisper encouragement. "Hold on, my love. Just a little longer. I'm right here." When the ambulance stopped at the hospital gate, nurses were already waiting, rushing Han into the delivery room. Tan followed, his legs trembling but his resolve unshaken. He would not leave her side. The hospital hallway glared with white lights, filled with footsteps and voices that only heightened the tension. Inside the delivery room, Han lay on the bed, her face pale but her eyes searching for Tan. He came to her side immediately, clasping her trembling hand. Amid the doctor's instructions and the steady beeping of machines, he bent close and whispered firmly, "I'm right here. Don't be afraid. We're about to meet our baby." Outside, my mother sat motionless in the waiting room, her fingers clutching a rosary. She prayed silently, eyes red as she stared at the closed delivery room doors. She would leap to her feet whenever a nurse passed, only to sink back down, her heart pounding wildly. Inside, the relentless contractions wrung cries from Han, her breath ragged and broken. She clutched Tana's hand so tightly that his skin turned red, but he only smiled and whispered, "You're so strong. Keep going. I believe in you." Time seemed to stop. Sweat, tears, and desperate breaths mingled into a scene both painful and powerful. And then, after every ounce of strength was spent, the first cry of a newborn pierced the air, shattering the tension. That cry was like a miracle song, flooding the room with light. Han wept, smiling through her tears. Tan bent close, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Our baby. Welcome to the world." Outside, my mother rose to her feet, eyes brimming, hand pressed to her chest. Her grandchild's cry swept away every worry, leaving only a sacred, overwhelming happiness in her heart. The newborn's fragile cries still echoed through the bright white room. After the doctors cleaned the baby and wrapped the tiny body in a soft towel, they gently carried the child to Han. The moment she laid eyes on her little angel, her heart seemed to stop. With trembling hands she reached out, holding the baby close to her chest. The infant was so small, rosy skin, tiny hands twitching as if searching for warmth. As the baby's cheek pressed against her chest, the cries softened, replaced by steady breaths. Han burst into tears, sobbing as she whispered, "My love, Mommy's here. I've waited for you so long." Tan stood by, his eyes red. He bent down, wrapping his arms around both mother and child, his voice choked with emotion. "Our family is finally complete." The delivery room door creaked open, and a nurse signaled for family. My mother hurried in. Seeing Han holding her grandchild, she couldn't hold back her tears. Her trembling hands rested on her daughter-in-law's shoulder as she bent down to gaze at the baby. A radiant smile spread across her face as she exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, my grandchild, so strong, so beautiful." In that moment, the room was filled with a gentle light. No more exhaustion, no more fear, only overwhelming joy. Laughter mingled with tears, hands clasped together. All of it became a sacred memory the family would carry forever. Cradled in love, the baby slowly opened its eyes, blinking at the world for the first time. And waiting there was a family overflowing with love. A few days later, once Han regained her strength, the family left the hospital and returned to their familiar home. The sky that day was unusually clear, sunlight falling gently as if to welcome the new arrival. Tan carefully carried the baby to the car, each step slow and cautious, as though afraid the slightest jolt might wake the tiny angel. When the front door opened, the familiar home seemed infused with new energy. My mother had already prepared a corner of the room. A tidy crib placed beside the bed, colorful toys dangling above it. On the table, small bottles of herbal bathwater and neatly folded baby clothes gave off a faint fresh scent. The air was filled with the aroma of newborn milk, toasted rice powder, and the warmth of love. On their first day home, Han hardly left the baby's side. She watched every breath, every tiny movement. Whenever the baby stirred or whimpered, she held her close, softly humming a lullaby. Though her body was still weary from childbirth, her eyes shone with a happiness she had never known. Tan was no less devoted. He learned how to prepare milk, change diapers, and soothe the baby with his gentle voice. Sometimes he fumbled and laughed at himself, sometimes he stayed up the whole night without sleep, but never once did he complain. Just seeing his wife and child safe and peaceful made every effort worthwhile. My mother gently guided them in caring for the baby, showing how to hold her properly, how to bathe her with warm water. She often sat by the crib, softly talking to her grandchild as if the baby could already understand every word. The sound of laughter and tender whispers filled the house, making the once quiet home even warmer. At night, the family gathered in the small room. Under the soft yellow light, Han leaned against Tana's shoulder, cradling the baby asleep in her arms. Tan wrapped his arm around them both, his eyes brimming with happiness. Across from them, my mother watched the scene, her face glowing, tears rolling down, tears of peace. In that moment, the house was no longer just a place to live, but a sacred haven. A new chapter of family life had begun. A chapter written in love, sacrifice, and the innocent cries of a newborn child. Time passed as swiftly as a dream. Not long ago, Han was still carrying the weight of her pregnancy in the final months, and now the baby was already several months old. From a tiny, fragile being, the child had begun to smile, with round sparkling black eyes like little pearls reflecting the family's joy. Whenever little brother Tom's footsteps echoed through the yard, the baby would coo softly, tiny hands waving and tiny feet kicking as if eager to join in his play. As for Tom, his pride in being the big brother was boundless. Whenever he saw his mother busy, he would rush to the crib, doing everything he could to make the baby laugh, waving his arms and legs around or mimicking barking dogs and meowing cats, until the baby burst into clear, bell-like giggles. The baby's laughter rang through the house, blending with Tom's cheerful voice, filling the space with the sweet harmony of family. Sitting beside them, holding the baby in her arms and watching the two siblings chirp happily, Han's heart overflowed with indescribable happiness. Sleepless nights and moments of exhaustion now seemed like small matters. Her eyes glowed with serenity, as though she had found an eternal refuge in this simple love. Ton remained the strong pillar of the household. Quiet yet always present, he managed everything big and small. Changing diapers, preparing milk, rocking the baby to sleep, then gathering toys scattered by Tom. On nights when he saw his wife worn out, he would gently rest his hand on her shoulder, his warm voice like a tender comfort. "Rest now. Let me take care of the baby. You've been through so much already." Those simple words warmed Han's heart. She knew behind them lay the love and silent sacrifices that Ton gave his family. Sometimes, late at night, Han would wake and see Ton sitting on the chair, the baby asleep in his arms, while Tom leaned against his father's shoulder, murmuring, "Dad." In his dreams, her heart would tremble at the sight. It was a simple picture, yet so full of love, a treasure more precious than anything material. The little home was now always filled with laughter, babbling attempts at speech, playful squeals from the older brother, and the baby's sweet sounds. Together, they wove a melody of happiness that enveloped the family. In those moments, Han realized she was living the most beautiful days of her life. Days where love came not only from her steadfast husband, or from her mother's gentle hands, but also from her children's innocent laughter. A pure bond tying the family together in warm, eternal embrace. That night, as the household sank into deep sleep, the small room lay still, with only the soft hum of the fan and the steady breaths of the two children. Han sat quietly on the wooden chair by the crib, her eyes following each tiny movement of her baby. Tom curled up under his blanket, his face angelic, lips murmuring in sweet dreams, a faint smile flickering now and then. The baby slept peacefully in her arms, rosy skin glowing under the warm yellow light. In that instant, Han's heart melted. She gently stroked Tom's soft hair, her hand trembling with emotion, then leaned down to kiss her baby's forehead. Her heart overflowed with a sacred love beyond words. In the stillness, she whispered, her voice trembling yet full of tenderness, "My children, grow up safe and happy. Life out there may not always be easy, but I believe with your father's love, with your grandmother's care, and with my love, you will have the strength to walk steadily forward. Whatever the future brings, I will always be here, walking every step beside you." Outside the window, the full moon shone like a gentle lantern in the sky, casting silver light over Han's hair and slender shoulders. A breeze stirred the curtain, adding to the stillness and warmth of the scene. In the small room, love itself seemed to weave an invisible blanket, wrapping around mother and children. On the nearby bed, even in half-sleep, Ton unconsciously reached out his hand, as if to pull his wife and both children into his wide embrace. Seeing him, Han's lips curved into a serene smile. She knew this man would always remain their steadfast shelter, no matter what. In that moment, her heart grew calm, a steady faith rising within her. The future might hold challenges, but she understood that the love within this home would forever burn bright, a flame that would light every step ahead. And so the story did not end there. It was only just beginning. The journey of a small family woven with love, sacrifice, and the laughter of children would continue to be written each day, each passing year, like a gentle melody echoing endlessly in their hearts.
Xin chào mọi người, chào mừng mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Rất hy vọng rằng kênh của mình sẽ được sự ủng hộ của mọi người để ngày càng phát triển và có nhiều câu chuyện hay hấp dẫn hơn đưa đến cho mọi người xem. Nếu mọi người thấy những câu chuyện của mình hay thì nhớ cho mình một like và đặc biệt là nhớ để lại cho mình những nhận xét ở dưới phần bình luận để mình cải thiện những video sau. Và hơn nữa là những câu chuyện của mình hiện tại đang được đăng tải vào lúc 7 giờ tối tại khung giờ Việt Nam. Thì mọi người nhớ chú ý đón xem để không bỏ lỡ video nào nha. Những câu chuyện về những người mẹ đơn thân, những người mẹ vất vả tần tảo nuôi con, phải trải qua những sóng gió, những biến cố trong cuộc sống và họ sẽ phải làm gì để vượt qua. Những câu chuyện đầy ý nghĩa mang đến, hy vọng sẽ mang đến những niềm vui cho mọi người mỗi khi xem. Và rất hy vọng được sự ủng hộ của mọi người để kênh mình ngày càng phát triển hơn. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người nha.